Let me get a microphone. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. It talks about, agents talk about, people that are trying to sell you things are talking about exclusive listings. They're talking about taking your house and a specific agent listing it, not putting it on the multiple listing service, and then they will use their own infrastructure, their own abilities, their agent networking group, a lot of emails, their whole company. They probably will tell you that they have a list of 4,000 agents or 10,000 agents or whatever it is, and they're going to be able to take your listing and they're going to be able to put it on the market for sale, and then they're going to be able to advertise it to its small group. And in some cases, maybe it's to test the market. Maybe, I guess that's one of the pitches. The other one, it's going to be simple. You're not going to be bothered. We're not going to have a lot of tire kickers walking through your house, messing with your stuff, bringing all their germs and stuff in, or whatever they're trying to sell you. I don't know if that's the best way. And just as a thought experiment, and if that's all you and you've done this and you love it to death, and good for you, I just think, the market's going to dictate what a house is going to sell for. When you limit the views on that residence, then you limit the market, and then you limit the dictation, and then you limit the amount that you're potentially going to get. Now, there could be the one scenario where that best offer is going to come through a specific agent with an exclusive listing from a buyer that they happen to know. But then on that side of it, how's that commission structure going to look, and what are you going to be paying to have that process upheld? And then, what's the other advantage of using this exclusive type of architecture? The big real estate companies are playing the same very game. They're taking listings and they're making them very exclusive, and in order to probably double in both of it. I think that's the strategy, and try to capture more market share. So instead of the real estate brokerages trying to engage in a fair playing field, which seems to be best for buyers and sellers of real estate, of course everybody has their game and their little secret sauce, and they're trying to get out there and tout this process that's going to make it easier, get you more money, be more liquid, and of course only agents that are representative of a top tier real estate company are going to bring buyers into your residence. So you cut out all the fluff. As far as I'm concerned, when people are licensed and they can lose their license by screwing things up, there usually isn't a lot of fluff there. Usually it's kind of a serious game, because if they go into it, write some BS offer and play a game, their reputation is going to be soiled. They're not going to last long in the business. So that kind of promise, predicated on whether you use this big magical brokerage or a single agent that's coming to you via the actual multiple listing service, well, I don't think it actually applies. So I would stick with local. But the way that you're watching this change hands and this magical shell game that exists, do yourself a service. Make sure the interview process, if you're interviewing or talking to an agent that's doing this, find out their why. Try have them explain why limiting your exposure for a particular listing, because you've chosen to go with a singular agent and their own marketing and advertising scheme, how that stacks up against a nationally syndicated system that's going to show your real estate listing to people, not just in your local market, but all across the United States of America and the world. Explain how that stacks up. And of course, your property that you list in Santa Clarita, California, your buyer might not come from Dubai. Boy, that was horrible. But it might not come from there, but still, having that exposure doesn't hurt. And sometimes you wouldn't believe where some of these buyers come from. So you don't want to cut them out. Now, if the agent says, well, the people that I'm advertising to, it's remarkable, there's all these emails, okay, all right. Okay, I get that. So let's look at your open rate of the emails. If you're really sending out 4,000 or 10,000 emails to all these agents in Southern California, bring me proof of your open rate. Okay, and they should be able to do this. This isn't anything difficult. I use AI automations. Whenever I'm doing email blasts, I can tell you exactly how many people open that email, how many people did something in that email, because if there's a link in there, then I'm tracking that with code coming back from that email back into my system, and I'm watching exactly who clicked on what. I do this for my sellers. I do this for those people, because we want to be able to track, who's looking at the listing. And of course, that exclusive thing, that's not my thing. I represent sellers only, not even buyers. So I'm focused on them 100%. But what I do is I have that tracking ability. So if the agent's coming out there and saying exclusively they're going to be able to market your house, I mean, if they're able to send it to 10,000 local agents in Los Angeles, Southern California, or wherever your demographic happens to be, and they're able to show you an open rate, better than 50%, yeah, pretty good. That's better than industry standard. But if they're showing you an over rate of 2 or 3%, or even 20% or 30%, yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me how that can be more beneficial than them doing that same thing. So don't stop doing that. But also putting it on the public multiple listing service so it gets syndicated. Now, with the public syndication systems, the multiple listing service takes that information for your listing and it then pushes it, your brokerage, the agent's brokerage goes to the MLS. MLS then goes to the syndication networks. That's Realtor.com. And Realtor.com is the trade organization's website for realtors. But Zillow picks up that feed, and other sites that have been allowed to have it as well. Compass, Redfin, the other major brokerages, Remax, all that, Real. So they're pulling that same data. So it gets syndicated all across the world. Now, there's most of the syndication websites, like the big ones like Zillow and those, they're selling your information. If you're a real estate buyer, real estate seller making some kind of inquiry because of something that's on their syndication site, you give up your information, then they're selling your information to agents, the agents that are paying to use that platform. So you're being monetized probably without yourself even knowing it. Does it really matter to you? Maybe not. Maybe it's not a big deal. But just understand the mechanism. These sites aren't helping you for free because they're just wonderful and fantastic. They're doing it because there's money in your name and your email address and your phone number attaching yourself to a particular inquiry or a real estate listing because you want to know more information. It's rare that the agent that ends up contacting you through one of these portals is actually the listing agent, because most of us don't pay for these systems. I mean, it's thousands, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month in some cases for some agents that want to basically trump and own these platforms. So you have to look at your return on investment, and if you're, giving out half of what you make, plus then you got another half of that going to the government. I mean, there comes a point when you're just going to be pulling all your hair out and you're going to end up bald like me. Anyway, that being the case, know how the game works. So these syndication systems, they're very beautiful and lovely, and they're trying to elicit information from you. And once you give up your information, then of course they're going to sell that to the agents. So really, the agents are taking something that you gave them to sell, and then they're putting it on the MLS. The MLS is uploading it into these different syndication sites if it's publicly facing, not an exclusive. And then from there, it gets propagated to all these different channels. And of course, anybody that inquires, those syndication sites are going to be making money off the agents that are paying for those leads. And then it just keeps going. But back to the beginning of this, what would be the advantage? And if there is some kind of an articulable advantage that you can see proof of, then good for you, then all day long. I just don't see it. And now we have the real estate brokerages playing that same exclusivity game. And I think that's going to be to the detriment of home sellers and home buyers out there, because you want the best exposure for your property. A singular agent can do a lot, but not as much as a syndication system or the multiple listing service. And you can push the public aside, but when it comes to real estate agents and advertising and marketing, they have lists of clients. Their clients are within that multiple listing service field, and they have listings fed to them that meet a particular criteria. Now, the agent should also be doing other heavy lifting and not letting the automated MLS system, just send out these listings. And people are also doing their own research. But that little thing that I just talked about, it's not little at all. When agents have a client, they set them up on an MLS strip showing those listings that are coming on the market. That's where your listing gets into. And it gets sent to these people. And there's a lot. Also in Southern California, just an FYI, there's also a coming soon field in the listing. So whenever I represent a seller, we can make a decision up to 21 days if we want a property to show up in a coming soon field. The only way those listings are accessed is by an email that has to be generated from the system to a specific person, a specific email address with a specific real estate agent. That being the case, you get that 21-day preview. You're not going to see those listings in the syndication platforms or these other websites. They're not there. You have to get them by email. So if you have your agent, make sure they set you up on the coming soon listings. But just back to this whole thing with all of these people. I mean, it's like we're ants trying to crawl on top of the pile and be the number one. I appreciate that. That's great. Good for you. It's just like AI. You know, you want to be the first adopter, replace your whole workforce so you can be the one that walks away with the suitcase full of money. But if you put everybody out of work because you're the early adopter with AI and get rid of all your staff, and everybody else does this as well, which unfortunately human beings are funny like that, then we're going to end up with people not being able to buy anything because nobody's employed. So when you're looking at the real estate thing about maybe trying to own both sides of every transaction, and that's illegal in some states. Dual agency is illegal. So if that's really your plan, as your major companies out there that are going to, hold both sides of every transaction to double the income, yeah, the lawsuit kind of settled that, right? Because even though it's always been negotiable that now a buyer-broker agreement has to be signed, now buyers know what they're getting into. If you happen to be the brokerage or that listing agent, maybe you can negate that. Maybe open houses negated as well, but ultimately, that's the play. Be wary, be careful. And if you're hoping the government's going to save you and not outlaw dual agency everywhere, well, be careful with your positioning and also be careful with what you wish. You just may get it. I'm Connor. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.